Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. I want to talk special teams and LSU to lead off the show today. I wrote a piece over at LouisianaSports.net about LSU special teams and kind of dug through some numbers because Brian Kelly spoke in pretty glowing terms about his special teams unit back on Tuesday. And this is a group that, as you all know, if you've watched LSU football at all over the last 2 years, has been much maligned since Brian Kelly got to Baton Rouge. He made the decision to put Brian Polian in charge of special teams. After 1 year, that was not going to work, and they moved on. It all started with a disaster in the Superdome with Florida State, where LSU had a field goal blocked and then an extra point blocked with no time on the clock to lose the game. They also muffed 2 punts in that game. Later on in that season, you muffed the opening punt against Tennessee. You had offsides on kickoffs. I mean, it was a disaster as far as special teams go for LSU 2 years ago, and it wasn't a whole heck of a lot better last year. It was a little bit better, but it was wildly conservative last year. And you realize that over the course of 2 seasons, LSU essentially scrapped the punt return game because they didn't have any confidence they could execute catching the ball. In 2022 and 2023, LSU returned 23 of 105 punts. That is a return rate of 22%. Now, you've brought in Zavion Thomas. He's already returned 8 of the 20 punts that he's fielded. That's 40% return. So he's doubled your return rate, and he hasn't dropped the ball yet. So you've made a significant change there, and I think we all agree one that should work out in LSU's benefit. Brian Kelly said back on Tuesday that we hadn't busted the big one, but we got a sure-handed guy back there, and I think the big one is potentially coming. Keep in mind, Zavion Thomas averaged 12.5 yards per punt return and had a punt return touchdown against Georgia at Mississippi State. He had 202 return yards as a freshman in college. That's almost double what LSU's had over the last 2 years. He had, again, 202 punt return yards, and LSU at 126 in the last 2 years combined. I mean, they essentially put Javen Nicholas and Greg Clayton back there to do nothing. And that makes plenty of sense when you've got Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, and you can just go ahead and march down the field whenever you want. They didn't return a lot of punts in 2019 either. But they've got the ability to do that. But it's not just the punt return game that's been better. Aaron Burrell has been great. Brought him in to handle the kickoffs, and it's not something that I think we spend a lot of time talking about, but you realize that Aaron Burrell has kicked 25 kickoffs this year. 24 of them have been touchbacks. The one that wasn't a touchback was after Kyron Lacey got the unsportsmanlike penalty that backed LSU back up to the 20-yard line against USC, and Burrell couldn't kick it to the end zone, and you almost gave up a kickoff return touchdown on that one. Zachariah Branch nearly broke it, and Burrell actually made the tackle. But when you haven't given him a 15-yard penalty to back him up in the shadows of his own goal line, he's kicked through the end zone every time, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Don't give teams a chance to run it out and make a huge play. I'd rather just knock it through the end zone, and Burrell has absolutely done that. Now, Jay Bramlett was an unsung guy on last year's team, mainly because he didn't play very much. LSU didn't punt very much last year. They were last in the country in punts. But when Jay Bramlett did have his chance to punt, he was awesome. Do you know how many punts were returned against LSU last year? Beck, I'll just let you throw a guess out there. How many times did teams attempt to return a punt against LSU?
Last year?
Yeah.
Let's say 30.
2 punt returns. He didn't punt very much, but when he did, it was high and it was fairly long, and they fair caught it. LSU's opponents last year had 2 punt returns for -1 yards. I don't even know how to say that. -1 yard? -1 yards? Whatever. Yeah, -1 is what it was. That is as good as you can do. And so this year, we were out there at camp, and we're watching Peyton Todd and Blake Oxendorf punt. And if you were listening or reading practice reports, wherever you read those, or looking at Twitter or wherever you were getting your information in the fall, there wasn't a lot of glowing conversation about LSU's punters. because we saw a lot of punting, and it wasn't great. And so you had some real concern about filling in for a guy that did his job very, very admirably. Keep in mind, Brian Kelly had Jay Bramblett for 5 years, dating back to 2019 at Notre Dame. Bramblett had done all the punting for Brian Kelly. So you had to turn that over. And so they made the decision. Brian Kelly was asked before the season, like, okay, how are you going to handle punting? And said, we'll use both. And now it's pretty evident that Peyton Todd is handling the longer punts and Oxendorf is handling the shorter punts. And all 4 times that Blake Oxendorf has been sent out there to punt, his punts have been downed inside the 20. He's 4 for 4. Todd is averaging 41.1 yards per kick, which is not unbelievable, but it's not terrible either. And he hasn't given up a ton of return yardage. They're only averaging 4.4 yards per return. So those guys have put LSU in a good spot as far as punting goes. Brian Kelly talked about it in a little bit more detail, and basically what he said was, we're directionally kicking, and they're executing what we're asking them to do. And so while you couldn't take a step back as far as punt returns go, and you were okay on kickoffs, but you've really taken a step forward there, you could have taken a big step back in punting, and you really haven't to this point. It hasn't been as good, but it's been good enough. And then you come to the final piece of that, which is field goal kicking. And Damien Ramos is 5 of 6 on this season. His lone miss came on that one time-sensitive kick against Nichols. You'll probably remember Ricky Collins was in the game because Nussmeier had to go out. And Ricky Collins got tackled on the left sideline right in front of LSU's bench, and they ruled him out of bounds with 3 seconds to go in the half. So LSU's field goal team went out there. Clock was stopped, and the official said, hey, we're going to go under and we're going to review this. So they reviewed it and determined and announced that, hey, he was down inbounds, so the clock will start on my whistle. And I thought LSU should have snapped the ball and spiked it. It was second down. You could have spiked the ball and then not had to rush the kick. Instead, they lined everybody up, and they got things ready to go. And when they blew it ready to go, they snapped it, and they got a good rush. Nichols did, and Ramos missed it. And that's when Brian Kelly blew the gasket on Ramos going to the halftime locker room. And Kelly said that, I told him what was going to happen. The officials confused him. He listened to the officials, not me, and I didn't like that and all the whole deal, whatever. I thought LSU should have spiked the ball. They didn't, and he missed the kick. That's the only one he's missed thus far. He's 5 of 6. If you extrapolate it out for his 3 seasons, he's been a 77% kicker. He's 79% as a kicker from under 50 yards. He's only been asked to try one 50-yarder in his career. It was last year, and he missed it. But he's done a good job as far as kicking goes. And Kelly said he was rock solid and dependable back in Tuesday's press conference. He last year, if you go for a whole season, was 12 of 15. He was 5 of 6 inside 30, 5 of 5 inside 39. So you're talking about 10 of 11 inside 40 yards. And then he was 2 of 3 from 40 to 49 yards. So he's been good. I don't have a problem with him. Is Cade York probably a little bit better? Sure. He's got a stronger leg and gives you the ability to kick one from 43, 44 that Ramos probably doesn't. But he's been pretty solid. So you look across the board at LSU special teams. Punt returning, they've taken a step up. In punting, they've been very good. In the kickoff game, they've been excellent, banging it through the end zone without penalties, doing a great job there. They've gotten their field goals taken care of. There's not really an issue with the special teams here. Bob Diaco is running things. He's been doing that kind of for 2 years. And I have been pleasantly impressed with what LSU has done on special teams. And it's just another department where I feel like the program is getting a little bit better. And nobody that I talk to is satisfied right now with exactly where LSU's football program is. Most people suggest that things are getting better. You've got a really good staff. The recruiting class is excellent. The offense is humming. The special teams have been improved. What's the issue with the defense? I think it's personnel. I think the coaching's getting a little bit better. And once you clean that up, you've got what looks like a championship level program. Nobody's going to spend a ton of time talking about special teams because it's one snap here, one snap there, one snap there, and all of a sudden you look up and there have been 14 special team snaps. And we're more apt to talk about the 78-yard touchdown run that Caden Durham had, or the sacks that Braden Swinson had, or the big plays the defense allowed, or not getting the running game going. All that stuff tends to be more top of mind than special teams. But if you take a second and look at what LSU's done from a special teams perspective, it's been good. And maybe that helps them in the margins get a win here or there. They figure to play a lot of close games. When you look at Ole Miss, A&M, Arkansas on the road, Florida on the road, Bama, like, you figure to be in 3 or 4 really tight games moving forward. Maybe you dust Arkansas, maybe you dust Vanderbilt, maybe Alabama comes in here and overwhelms you. But it looks like, based on the schedule to me, they're going to be in some tight games. And maybe, just maybe, the execution from a special teams perspective, whether it's a late field goal, whether it's not allowing any kickoff yardage, whether it's directionally punting properly, whether it's Zavion Thomas busting one for a big play and changing the complexion of a game, that might be the thing that tips the scales in LSU's favor. We wouldn't have said that 2 years ago. We would not have said that last year, because you're just trying to prevent utter disaster on special teams. There hasn't been any disaster on special teams at this point. They've been fine. And that's a positive step for LSU's football program. If you're looking for LSU content, there's a story on LSU special teams right there at LouisianaSports.net. You can also find it on YouTube at Hunt on LSU. Appreciate y'all for subscribing to the YouTube channel and for checking out LouisianaSports.net. You don't have to subscribe to that. That's all free. Go check it out. We got a ton of content on there right now. Saints perspective, SEC football news, and of course, all of your LSU content as well. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.